With The Last of Us video in development, I had to make a video or two to fill in the void, and when I'm realizing that Last of Us might take longer than expected, I decided to revisit a game that I hold dear to my heart, and it probably is some of your guys' favorite as well. That game I'll be talking about today is Undertale, the pacifist route. I'm going to be separating the two routes, that being pacifist and genocide. The reason for this is because I believe there are plenty of things to talk about in both routes, and combining both of them into one video would also be a long video. So I'm going to do the pacifist first. I know there's a neutral route, but there are so many versions of it that I'm not going to get into it. At least, not talk about it as much. With everything out of the way, let's talk about Undertale and what makes it so special. So the game starts off with an introduction of the game's lore. There are two races, humans and monsters, and they have lived amongst the land together. But something happened between the two as war broke out. The humans in this universe have magical abilities just like the monsters in this game. However, the monsters during this war lost and were pushed into a mountain called Mount Ebit. With some wizards, they created a barrier that none of the monsters can break unless the humans themselves bring it down. So now the monsters are stuck in the mountains, but they basically made it their home. That is where we see in a cutscene that a human is entering the mountains and has fallen down. After which the title card enters the frame, and now we get to name the human. Yes, we. I decided to bring along two people for the ride. A friend I've brought into one of my videos before, and my wife, Mae.
Are we fucking with Jackal? Me personally, I'm not fucking with Jackal. I don't think it would fit for the following human.
Where the you? Oh.
Bro, is this person a boy or a girl?
Okay, so the person that we play as, it's based on your preference. They could be a girl or a boy.
I got one for you.
Okay. No, we're not going any further. We're not going any further. I know exactly what you're thinking. We can't go any further with that. I can't censor that.
I know. So no.
See, the viewers may think they're trying to say fat. That's not what he's trying to say here.
Peter.
No, we're not doing Peter, bro. Peter's too funny though.
We were trying to come up with a name for like 5 minutes, and we finally came up with Alex, a good gender neutral name. After selecting the name, we get introduced to our protagonist. As we walk forward, we meet a talking flower named Flowey, who tried to introduce us to the world of the underground, as they call it, and basically showed us how to play the game. But Flowey is a sadistic bastard as he tries to kill us. Fortunately, we get saved by a goat woman named Torio. She guides us through a place called the Ruins, as there are puzzles that need to be solved. I say guides very loosely here, as after the practice fight against a dummy and a puzzle or two, she leaves us to finish up some business she had at home. She did give us a cell phone before leaving, and we decided to call her mom for the funnies. After some battles with frogs and flies, a few puzzles to solve, especially with a talking rock, we eventually found Toriel. She allowed for us to enter her home. We sleep on a bed that seems to look like a child's bed honestly, and we decided to find Toriel around the house. We're trying to get back home as we're like 10 years old or something, but after a snail effect and some persistence, she leaves us to do something. That is when we found her downstairs and she drops a bombshell on us. The exit we're trying to go to is going to be destroyed by her, as she's doing this for our own good. So we should go back upstairs. She drops more information as to why she's doing this, as she's trying to protect us from a monster named Asgore in red text. But we keep going, wanting to leave, and that is when we enter a fight since she wants us to prove to her that we could survive. After a few turns, her attack starts to miss us, but it was actually on purpose. She, in reality, doesn't want to fight us and begs for us to go back upstairs so you could be like a family to her. But she later understands that this isn't right for her to do to you, as forcing you to live with her isn't a good thing. So she gives us a hug goodbye, looks back one last time, and leaves. We meet Flowey again, and he gives us his monologue about how the world is kill or be killed. We then enter the world, and then Undertale title card jump scare. As we continue forward, we eventually meet two skeleton brothers, a short pun-loving hot dog stand having and ketchup drinker, yes he does this, named Sans. Whilst his taller brother, who is very interested in being popular by joining the royal guard, spaghetti making, and pun hating, named Papyrus. Their whole shtick is that Papyrus wants to catch a human, that being us of course, but Sans doesn't really care as he just wants to make jokes and mess with his brother. Their antics are honestly some of the funniest parts of this game, as Toby Fox, the creator of Undertale, just knew how to sell them to us with the witty humor and random jokes that are thrown at us. Like, why are these guys spinning in circles after Papyrus found us? Why is there a lamp that's conveniently shaped like us just standing in the middle of nowhere? How did Toby Fox come up with these characters? I have no idea, but my friend, my wife, and I were having a blast. It eventually gets to a point where we end up in a town named Snowden, and it honestly feels really nice to be here, especially because of the music. From the receptionist to the bunny shopkeeper, it feels like everything belongs here. We even see a bartender that is just a guy on fire. Does he speak? No, but I think it's pretty cool. Eventually we have to fight Papyrus, as if he wants to enter this group called the Royal Guard, he has to capture us. I didn't really talk about the gameplay before, so I'm going to right now. The heart that is trapped in this box is you, and you must avoid all these objects like bones, flies, frogs, and so on to not take damage. Once it hits 0, you die. To defeat an enemy, you must either fight them, run away, or act. Act is a form of interacting with the opponent that allows for the fight to near its end. And to know if you have interacted correctly, their name will highlight yellow. Or pink, that's if you did a certain interaction with a frog. After their name is highlighted, you can go to Mercy and end the fight. Fighting or giving mercy to the monsters can lead to different outcomes and give many endings, but the one we're doing involves sparing every single monster in the underground. However, this is different against bosses. Trying to spare a boss isn't as easy as pressing Act, interacting with them, and then sparing as they don't react the same way as regular monsters. In order for the fight to continue and end, you need to spare them until they decide that they don't want to fight you anymore. Their names will not highlight in any color when the fight will end. So this is basically a situation where you just need to survive. With Papyrus, it's a bit different. You can interact with him, and one of the interactions are to flirt with him. Doing so makes the ending of his fight and his hangout different. Flirting will cause for his hangout to become a date, but if you just spare him throughout the fight and not act at all, like I did for his run, you will only hang out with him as the event. His hangout in general is some of the funniest things in the game, as not only does he break the fourth wall a few times here, his dialogue and his outfit are just full of things to laugh at. Like, why are his shoulder pads basketballs, bro? Does this man know how to dunk on motherfuckers? Papyrus and Sans' house have some funny things as well, like a drawer full of bones that now got eaten by Toby Fox. Yes, the dog is canonically Toby Fox. A room in the fridge that was added for the port of the Switch and the consoles like Xbox and PlayStation, but the room is different on each console. And then the funny short man can do the trombone, which that itself is a pun. You also have to do these special events with these bosses, as not doing so won't allow you to get to the pacifist ending. So me doing the hangout with Papyrus allowed us to get ever so closer to the good ending. Now we enter the waterfalls, which is my favorite level of this game, as the music is so tranquil and the area in general, as it's a waterfall area, has this nice blue and black color pattern that makes me feel relaxed. This is also the location, as well as the library in Snowden, that reveals the most amount of lore about the story of Undertale and how the monsters got put in the underground. But first, we gotta hang out with Sans. Well, not really. It's not the most important event to do, but it gives us more of an insight as to who he is, as well as a bit of a mystery to his character. Like his quote-unquote shortcuts. There are at least 3 to 4 times where he'd go into the opposite direction of the location he wants to go to, and he'd still end up at the said location. He's done this when you first met him and his brother as he walks towards the ruins. And he hilariously does this when you go down a path and see him be in 2 locations at once by just going back and forth. So he takes us to a bar called Grillby's, and he discussed with us about a talking flower. So it was safe to assume that he's talking about Flowey, as the talking flower in question highlights yellow. But then he goes on about something different called the Echo Flower, now highlighted blue. And as the name goes, whatever you say to the flower, it echoes back to the person listening to it. Although a funny joke to get at the player, these flowers do give us some information about the underground, and we can find these tablets on the walls about the monsters versus human war that went on. Before I discuss more about the story that went on in my playthrough, there will be times in which I'll be dissecting the story as time goes on, as it will be very important. So from gathering both information from the library and the waterfall tablets, there was a war that started between both humans and monsters, as we know from the intro. It tells us this already. They fought, the monsters lost, and they got sealed by some wizards. But the tablets give a big insight as to how the monsters lost and why the humans overpowered them. The war in question couldn't even be considered as such because although the monsters suffered a lot of casualties, they didn't get to kill a single human throughout the battle. The monsters are actually in a big disadvantage from the very start because according to the tablets, the monster souls are so weak that it'd take 100 monster souls to defeat one human soul. That really goes to show how much of an advantage the humans had, especially since they also conjure magic like the monsters. And as we head further down waterfalls, we do get a glimpse of a story between two monsters, and they're just having a normal conversation about making wishes. One of the monsters in particular has a wish that they'd one day see the stars outside of the underground. Although the other monster laughed, they also shared that sentiment. Now we head deeper into the underground. A monster named Monster Kid always seems to be psyched to see a new character named Undyne, the leader of the Royal Guard. Anytime we get chased by Undyne and then lose her, Monster Kid is always there to see it unfold at the end. The second time we get chased by Undyne though, we have to run away from these blades that come out of the ground. We eventually get put in a corner and instead of killing us, she breaks the bridge and we fall. I'm not sure why she didn't just kill us right here, but we live. However, we get a memory of something. A voice can be heard and the tone of the voice makes it sound like it's a kid. They see that we have fallen down and tries to help us up. The voice then asks for our name, and before we can get their name, we wake up. No kid near us at all. A very strange event that occurred as this is something that won't get explained at all, since we have to put the pieces together. Not just that, but we also fell on golden flowers. The same one you'd see at the very beginning of the game. We keep moving forward though, and we see a statue that is poured on by the rain. So we give it an umbrella and it plays music. This music is actually really important to the story, besides the fact that you could play the same music on the piano to unlock a hidden room. This statue gives some sad lore that I'll get into soon.
Yeah, they need to
So
lead
we
the
eventually
other
run into Monster Kid again in the rain, and he decides to fanboy about Undyne some more like a Goku Meat Rider fan when asked if a certain anime character can beat him. Like how he wants to meet her, how he saw the literal king enter his school and wished Undyne was there, to them believing she'd beat up the teachers. He does backtrack on that last part, but I thought it was pretty funny. We do get trapped by this wall that we can't go past, but Monster Kid allows us to climb on his shoulders to get over the wall. As we trudge through the waterfalls and we get into an area that gets really dark, we found an echo flower that tells us to look behind us. And as we do, Undyne is there. Undyne quite literally was aura farming here. Remember, you have to talk to the echo flower in order for it to repeat back to you. So I don't know where the fuck she was hiding, but I'll give her some props. Before the battle can start, Monster Kid comes out of nowhere and starts fanboying like always because she's about to fight a human, only to then realize that something is off. He gets pulled by the ear away from us, but we eventually see him again. This time he walks up to us and asks if we are human. He realizes that we are and asks us to be mean to him so he'd have the reason to hate us. We don't, and he attempts to walk away. But then he trips and almost falls to his death, grabbing onto the bridge with his teeth as he doesn't have arms. Undyne is there, and we have to either save him or run away. We save him and Monster Kid tells off Undyne to leave us alone. She does, we thank him, and we proceed forward. But that shit didn't matter because now she's aura farming on the mountain. She's telling us something about Asgore and how he needs to gather 7 human souls in order for the barrier that traps them to break. She explains that by killing us, we'd be doing the monsters a big service as us dying gives the monsters hope for freedom out of the underground. So now we're battling and this fight is really good. We have to guard our heart from the spear that she throws at us whenever our heart turns green. However, whenever our heart turns back to red, we have to run away. This happens a couple times. Papyrus does stop the fight by calling us for a bit about hanging out with Undyne, but the fight continues into a new location called Hotland. But as this place is surrounded by lava and Undyne is actually a fish, she gets dehydrated. Fortunately for her, there's a water cooler near us, so we spare her by giving her water and she begrudgingly runs away. Continuing forward, we found a lad that seems to be watching us on this big computer with the lights off. No one seems to be around, that is until we saw someone come out of the bathroom. Her name is Alphys, a royal scientist who is an anime weeb when you get to know her more. She admits that she's been spying on us since we left the ruins as there are cameras around the underground. Which is true, I did find one in the bush one time. She stated that she was going to call for help to get us, but got excited to watch our adventure. But that was until we heard a... Yeah, there's a zesty ass square robot named Metatone. He asks us some questions that are either near impossible to answer or just things that we already knew. but Alphys helps with giving us the answer every time. After Mettaton exposes Alphys' love interest, that being Undyne, he runs away. Alphys then upgrades our phone and heads to the bathroom. Heading out of the lab, we solve a few puzzles and encounter Mettaton again, this time in a cooking show. We grab some ingredients that he asked for us to get, like the eggs, milk, and flour. He then speaks to his 3 or so audience about missing one last ingredient to this cake he wants to make: a human soul. Before he could kill us with his chainsaw that he somehow got, Alphys saves us by saying we should get a substitute. Coincidentally, there happened to be one on a table nearby. That was until it grew into a tower somehow. Now we're time to get the last ingredient. Would have been really easy on its own, which is why Mettaton, like the hater he is now dropping the previous ingredients onto us. But since I've played Undertale like 8 times in my life, I didn't get hit a single time. Come to find out, the show of his is over and he doesn't care about the substitute now, so at least we didn't die later. Yeah. More puzzles are dropped onto us, and yep, we get the same song and dance because look who's back. This time he's a news reporter and we have to investigate the surrounding area for anything newsworthy. After investigating a certain item, it's revealed that all of these items, yes, even a dog, are bombs, and we have to defuse them. One by one, we defuse all the bombs with this bomb defusal thing in our phone that we somehow had due to Alphys upgrading the phone. I'm just gonna skip ahead here because guess what, Mettaton is back. This time he's singing us a song. It goes on about something about love to then about the king and how he'll take our soul. He even highlights how sad it will be, so I guess he cares? Maybe? That is until he drops us into the pit with a puzzle that we did 2 levels ago with Papyrus. And not gonna lie, it's pretty hard to do. At least in my opinion, because I've never beaten this level ever throughout my playthrough. I did find someone who did beat it, but man, I could just never replicate it. My memory is just bad. It's no one else's fault. So due to us not beating it, he will kill us with a firewall. That is until Alphys saves us by disabling them. Although it was a bit delayed, he fucks off for a while, but we do meet up with Sans at a restaurant. He wants to treat us to some dinner and to have a talk with us, so we follow him into the shortcut he knows of in the alleyway, and now we're inside. He talks to us about how our feelings towards wanting to go home seems to be strong, even though we already have stuff like food, drinks, and friends down in the underground. He then tells us a story about how he went up to a big door at the outskirts of Snowden and explains how he would knock on the door and make knock-knock jokes with himself. That was until he heard a woman's voice reply to his knock-knock. He made the joke and she started laughing. He stated that this was done for a couple of days, until one day she wasn't very happy from what he can tell. So he asked her what was wrong. That was when she said that if a human ever goes past this door, she wants Sans to look over them. Sans, someone who doesn't really like making promises, decided to do this for her as he hasn't really found someone who was a big fan of his jokes. That is when a bombshell dropped on us. Realizing that we are the human that went past the door, and if that promise never came out of her mouth, Sans explained that we'd be dead where we stand. He then says a couple more things and leaves. I've played this game many times before, and I still believe this was a pretty unnerving moment in the game, as everything that we have experienced so far has been nothing but cheerful and pretty funny up to this point. So for Sans of all people to tell us that he'd most likely killed us if he didn't keep on the promise was scary to think about, and it did get made thinking about what he said, the only person who hasn't played the game yet. We continue forward and now we entered the core, the second to last level to finally meet Asgore and be free. Alphys throughout this level has been feeding us information that whenever followed would lead us to a dead end or into a fight. When we finally entered a certain part of the level, we could tell that Alphys was feeling anxious and didn't know how to answer at this point, so she hung up the phone and we don't hear from her for a while. We do eventually find an exit to the core, but Mettaton stands in the way. He then drops his information onto us. Alphys this whole time was sending Mettaton to get in our way, and would get excited whenever we were victorious. But each time that we beat Mettaton, quote unquote, he'd always seem to be sassy or was putting up an act. She made up fights and scenarios so that we could favor Alphys and live out this fantasy of hers. However, he grew tired of this facade and decided that he wanted to take our soul personally so that he could be a star once he exited underground. We tried to fight Mettaton by shooting him, but that doesn't work. He seems indestructible in this form. So we got a phone call from Alphys to tell Mettaton to turn around, so that we could flip a switch that's on his back. After doing so, he turns into this vulnerable form. Yeah, this man gets even more zesty, and now this man is posing like crazy. We have to fight Metaton in front of an audience, and the only way to beat Metaton is by getting his ratings up and slowly beating him at his own game. The more the fight continues, the more robotic parts start to fall off of him until he's just a torso and head. He acknowledged that he has a lot of ratings and decided to take some calls before he left the underground forever. But when he started picking up calls from his fans, he realizes that the people down in the underground love him and don't want to see him go. He reflects on this and tells us that maybe the underground needs him to be their entertainer, as the world above have many stars already. So before he shuts down, he tells us that he's rooting for us. Alphys finally enters the room and freaks out a bit after seeing what happens to Metaton, but she calms down and tells us that he's alright and that she can fix him. So Alphys and I walk forward, and it's hyping us up that now we're so close to seeing Asgore. But with each conversation, her attitude starts to shift more and more until we finally reach the elevator. She couldn't handle holding the truth and speaks out. In order for us to escape from the underground, we'd have to kill Asgore. Before leaving for good, she apologizes. When we go to save for the first time, our character doesn't exclaim that they are determined to continue forward. It's safe to say that our character was either upset with this information that was told to them or was scared to even reach Asgore. And when we finally move forward, everything seems to be gray and white, reflecting the current mood that is set here. No music can be heard at this point until we finally found something familiar to us. This looks like Toriel's house, but the only difference being was the color in the rooms on the right changed due to some renovation according to the game. So now we know that Toriel was actually the queen, and for her being in the ruins away from her king was still unknown. The only thing we got from Toriel herself was that she was scared for us to get out of the ruins, as she doesn't want us to die from Asgore's hands. But then when we move around the house to try to find some keys, we start encountering more monsters. But they aren't here to fight us, they're here to tell a story. As we pick up some items like a heart-shaped locket and a dull knife, we get more of an insight about the family that were the king and queen. Asgore and Toriel had a son named Azriel, who found a human that fell into the underground. It was a child and they were badly hurt, but they looked after the kid and they became a new part of the family. It seemed to be a new form of hope for the underground, and this was something that gave the dreamer a new form of comfort in their life. However, the child became very sick, and unfortunately, the child passed away. Azriel, racked with grief, took the soul that came out of their body and transformed into this powerful being. He was able to get through the barrier with no problem, and he brought the child's body with him. He was promised to bring their body onto a pile of golden flowers, but when he found some, the humans saw Azriel holding on to the child in his arms. They assumed that Azriel killed the child, so they started attacking Azriel. He had all the power in the world to stop the humans, but he decided to instead head back home. Badly injured, he made it back home, but unfortunately, he collapsed and passed away. Asgore, grieving, he announced that if any humans were to come down to the underground, they are to take their souls. Although Toriel was upset for the loss of their children, she doesn't want any more bloodshed and didn't agree with what Asgore said, so she left the kingdom. After a huge lore dump onto us, we finally found Sans once again in the Judgment Hall. He looks at us and sees that we tried really hard to spare every single monster in the underground, and explains to us something important about what we see whenever we enter a fight. When we fight a monster, we see two things during and after the fight: LV and EXP. Sans explains that they're both acronyms, and both of these mechanics rise when killing a monster. EXP stands for execution points, whilst LV, although something that we see as a level, it actually stands for level of violence. He sees that we badly want to go home, but also sees that we might have to fight Asgore to get our freedom. He doesn't judge us for our commitment to get home, and is rooting for us in the end, just like everyone else. After it pans to our character, Sans disappears, and we don't see him for the rest of this route. We finally arrive to see Asgore, and he's shocked to see us. He stated that although he'd love to make us tea, him and our character already understand what has to happen. So he takes us to the barrier that traps the monsters in the underground. This is our battleground, and our final fight to escape. Before he fights us, he says if we had anything left to do so now. We didn't have anything to do, so we proceeded. However, before the fight starts, he reveals to us all 6 human souls in a jar. with the 7th jar being empty, reserved for us. And when we think this fight couldn't get any more tense, we are forced to fight him. Mercy is no longer an option. We can talk to him all we want, and although he does shake a bit and his stats goes down, he will still fight you with all of his might. This fight is honestly beautiful in my opinion. The music especially highlights how dire yet important this fight is to Asgore and our character. He uses everything he can to stop us, and even uses certain moves like the orange and blue attack, something that you don't really see all the time in battles. The orange attack being you have to move when it's about to hit you, but if the attack is blue, you must stand still. After a few minutes of fighting, we finally stop Asgore from continuing forward. He's saddened, but understands what has to happen if we want to leave the underground. But we don't want to kill him, so when given the option to spare and forgive Asgore, we took the chance. Asgore seems very excited by this, and even promised us that he'll take good care of us if we wanted to stay. But Flowey had different plans. He kills Asgore and destroys his soul, and because of Asgore revealing the souls to us, he took all of them and achieved ultimate power. Now, if this was done on the PC, the game would crash at this moment, but since this is done on console, it just turns to black and takes us to the intro of Undertale. But something seems different. The very first red flag is right in our face, as the monster that we see in the intro isn't of a goat like Toriel or Asgore, but of a monster we'd have in the early stages. The game then glitches out and shows us our new save point when we clicked on a star in the pitch black background. Flowey is level 9,999 and now has control over our saves. He destroys the 4th wall and destroys the save in front of us, saying how he feels great with all these souls being inside of him and that it's all thanks to us. He then slowly reveals to us his new form, and it's so strange to look at. Although it's a bunch of JPEGs put together, it looks so off-putting and even freaky to me, especially with a certain face that flashes on his TV screen that became Flowey's face. This fight is grueling and is so difficult. We can try to fight and hurt Flowey, but there is no use. We can only do 1 damage to him and it barely goes down. There were many times in which I almost died before getting saved by 6 of the souls that Flowey tried to kill me with their abilities. Each time you get put into a new arena with any of the souls, surviving long enough will get you the chance to click on the Axe button that now gives you enough health to survive Flowey's next encounter. The more you fight Flowey, the more it gets hard to have enough health to get to the next soul encounter. It even gets to a point where Flowey uses his saves and reloads a certain part of the fight to mess with you, and because I'm rusty, it has gotten me a few times, but I've managed to survive and even beat this fight on my first try. Eventually, all the 6 souls gather around our soul and helps us through the fight, and now we can do enough damage to fight and stop Flowey. We finally got him down, and he starts to freak out that we have managed to stop him from achieving his goal. Yeah, that is until he reloads his saves and kills us over and over until we are at our last health. He goes to kill us one last time, but a soul saves us once again, and now they're escaping from his body, until eventually he's back in his flower form. He waits for his demise since he hurts us so much, but we give him mercy until he cries and runs away. We finally escape the underground, and we get a call from Sans. He hopes that we are doing fine and explains to us what happens to the monsters since our departure. Toriel made it back to the kingdom and announces that no humans will be treated as enemies when they fall, but as allies. It disbands the royal guards, but Sans thinks it's for the best. Undyne still doesn't like us, and the people don't really know what happened to Asgore as he mysteriously died, so safe to assume it was due to us. The game ends there, but this isn't the pacifist route, because Asgore dies and we didn't become friends with Undyne. So when we came back to Undertale, we have to befriend Undyne. This video is long enough, I believe, and although I like to continue forward, I'm going to make this a 2-parter. The next video for the pacifist route will be out soon, and I do know that this does kind of suck considering we only talked about the neutral route, something I said I wasn't going to do. Everything that I've done throughout this video is on the path to doing the pacifist route of Undertale. When I do get to the genocide route, it'll be shorter as the lore is a bit shorter and the gameplay overall is more of the same thing throughout the route. So once the second video is made, That's where the story will unfold completely, and I will talk about my opinion about what I think about it, and why I believe that Undertale is very special. That's all I have for today. Stay safe and stay hydrated.